To start out, were you surprised to see Georgia out of the playoff picture from that last ranking, as it seemed like a lot of people around the sport were?
I think if you're trying to look at the 12 best teams in college football, Georgia is one of those to me.
Why is that, obviously?
Why is what?
Why is Georgia one of the top teams?
Look at their roster. I know that they haven't played the way they're capable of, but when they do, it's a team that you don't want to play, especially when they're motivated and frustrated. They got a lot of things they need to fix offensively. We're going to do some different tapes of how the offensive line, the physicality with the receivers, all the above needs to change, but it's still a team that went to Texas when everybody thought they were number one and dominated, and they got to get back to some of those areas. But I think when you're evaluating that versus evaluating compared to other teams, look at the matchups with some of the people that might be in the top 12 and say, okay, if this defensive line faces that offensive line, what happens? And I think you just go through that, and then it makes the picture a little bit clearer. So, but I think it's very murky now. It's hard to see because you've seen a Georgia team compete at an insanely high level, and then you've seen a Georgia team that hasn't consistently played at that level. And so I think that's probably part of how the committee's seeing it.
Tim, when you watch Carson Beck, what is it that you see that has led to some of the struggles, but obviously
I think pressuring
that he's had?
He's trying to probably feels the pressure and trying to fit it in and make a play. You can't score on every play, and you can't have that mindset. But I also, because we've been getting asked about that for many weeks, I always want to start by backing it up and saying, well, how is everything else unfolding around him? There are a lot of the plays last week where if you pause it, I'm going to do it tomorrow, and say, where is he supposed to go? What is he supposed to do? In this situation, it's easy for us to just look at the quarterback, but he did not have a lot of time. They did not run the ball very well, and he doesn't have a lot of places to go. On top of that, he also, and I think he would mention, he has to play better. But everyone has to play better. I think it's all the above. I think it's offensive line, it's running game, it's tight ends, it's receivers, it's game plan. I think it's all the above. And so it's easy to just single out one guy, and I do think there is no doubt times and areas he has to play better, in situations where I think he trusts his arm too much. He's trying to force it, he's trying to fit it in there, he's trying to make too many big plays. But I also think it's the best game because it's a great team game.
When, as a quarterback, you maybe don't trust your offensive line, your offensive line is having issues, what kind of impact does that have on you as a quarterback?
A lot. It's a big impact. It's an impact when you're questioning, am I going to be able to truly go through my read? Am I going to go through this progression? Do I have to get rid of it faster? Do I got to try to make a play? If I'm not trusting it, do my eyes creep? It's one of the important things. You can never look at the rush. You have to be able to keep your eyes down the field, and when you don't trust them the same, your eyes start to drop, and it starts to see the pressure around you. That leads to so many other ripple effects that aren't good. This game is also a great game because of the trust factor, and if you're curbing this team, I believe it's engaging everybody, and you got to trust one another. When you do that well, this team can be as good as anyone.
You mentioned the struggles of the run game. Obviously, Georgia's going to be without Trevor Etienne tomorrow. Just what are the things that Georgia can do to still have that kind of impact and keep defenses, guessing in terms of, are they going to run it, are they going to pass it?
Well, I think with I'll wait for those passes. With the way that football is played now, I think that you can have different forms of running game, right? You can have the extended handoff, which are the bubble screens, it's the jet sweeps, it's all getting playmakers going. And I think one of those areas that could make a defense very hesitant is getting Dylan Bell involved in the game early. This is someone, if you remember back a few years ago, the way he dominated against Tennessee. He's had really big games, and he is a freak. The reverse he did last week, and jumps over a player, he makes plays. How can you get him involved early? How can you get Nate Frazier involved, getting the ball in his hands, especially especially when he's going downhill. So I would expect to see some different options like that, where it's not just an inside zone or a power, but you're getting the running game, an extended running game in different areas with some of the really gifted players.
Looking at not having ETN for a quarterback, do you think Carson will come into this game with more pressure, knowing he doesn't have that leading rusher?
I think he's already going to feel the pressure. I think one of the things to help get him out of that is a good quick game. First of all, get in some of the bubbles and screens, but then he does a really good job throwing on time in the quick game. He did that a few times last week with some of the slants, the 3 receivers on a bunch side, and getting it out fast, just getting him going a little bit. I think that would be really important. I think if you do it, you can calm him down, and he's just so accurate with those underneath passes that I would expect to see some of those as well.
Georgia beats a nation of drops coming into this game from a quarterback's perspective.
That adds to the pressure as well.
Obviously, just how can the coaches kind of fix that? You think that'll mend Carson's confidence? Obviously,
I don't know if it's something you fix. It's just something you work on and say, guys, we're putting the past behind us, all right? And that's something that Kirby's been so good at, of finding a way to build momentum, to build confidence, to build a belief. And I think it's, you put the past. Yeah, okay, you have the most drops. Guess what? That's in the past. We're in the present. And what is it for 3 hours that we can put together that can beat Tennessee at home with the crowd behind us? Because everything's in front of us. If they win against this game and run the table, because of the way college football is this year, everything's in front of you. And I think he uses that. If this is last year, guess what? Your kind of hopes and dreams are dashed. If it's the last 10 years, if it's when I was playing, you no longer have the same hopes and dreams, but you do this year. I think you use that as a momentum, like, look, this, for a lot of you teams, this wouldn't be good enough, but it is this year. If we figure out a way to get it done and we're in the top 12, everything's still in front of us, and I think you build off of that, and you still have so much freaking talent there. And I think you learn from the past, you don't repeat it, and you lock into the present.
What's the wear and tear like playing SEC football and then being, we're mid-November,
very NFL-like.
Just what it's like at this point in the
I think
year.
it's the biggest difference between other conferences. It's not that the best in different conferences couldn't beat the best in the SEC. That absolutely can happen. What the hardest part of going through an SEC schedule is the physical wear and tear. You're going from Ole Miss right to Tennessee. You're going from a South Carolina to an LSU, from an LSU to an A&M. And all of a sudden, it's not just, how good that team is. It's literally, I physically need rest. My shoulders are about to fall apart. And that's just, it's a wear and tear. And who handles it the best is not just the best team, but it's the team that can play consistently the best. And that is not always the same thing.